So I've stopped doing first impressions of seasons because a lot of my opinions have just been the same, season over season, for a seasonal launch. It's also incredibly hard to judge a season by its first day, and every launch day of every new season, I see the same comments every time. Is this it? This is the new content, etc., etc. But considering that this season is not too complicated to follow so far, I figured this time around I would give some light first impressions, since there are a couple of things I do want to discuss. Let's start with how the season works. Not super complicated compared to last season, it's actually quite straightforward. You have two activities in Riven's Lair and the Coil, with Riven's Lair essentially just being one round of the Coil with fewer things going on. This is going to be for people who want maybe a shorter or easier seasonal activity experience for whatever reason. The Coil is a much longer and much more difficult experience than we have ever gotten in a seasonal activity, not to mention one of the most rewarding. There are a few things you need to know in order to maximize your success here. The Coil is up to a 4-stage activity, with each stage getting more difficult as you get farther in. The first stage is at -5 light, so enemies are 5 levels higher than you, increasing by 5 levels for every stage up to a maximum of -20, aka master difficulty. The first stage is going to take you about 10 to 15 minutes to complete, and every stage after is probably going to tack on anywhere from an extra 2 to 10, maybe even 15 minutes, since things get, well, they get harder. A complete run can take anywhere from 40 to 70 minutes, depending on your skill level. This is not an activity that goes forever like Altars did last season. Each stage has multiple different combat arenas based on Last Wish or the Dreaming City, although there are a couple of unique spaces. You're going to start with a platforming section with a small amount of enemies. You're going to go into a non-boss encounter, into another platforming section, into a boss encounter. However, the most important thing to this activity is shown right as you enter. Fused Wishing Glass, aka shards. These are used to purchase buffs from Riven in between stages, which give you various buffs, and I assume these are going to rotate daily, weekly, every so often. These are also what dictate your score for the entire run. The only thing that matters for your score is collecting shards. Regular ones are worth 100, red ones are 500, I think purple is worth 1,000, but those are a bit more rare. The bulk of the shards that you are going to find will be in the platforming sections, contained in these pots and jars. We're going Legend of Zelda mode right now. We're breaking pots for rupees. We're breaking pots for shards. These pots aren't super hidden, but they're very easy to miss and skip if you are not looking for them. They're tucked in corners or behind rocks, but nothing really more than that, at least based on this first day and based on what we know right now. They're going to glow purple. They're pretty easy to spot when you're looking for them. Shards are also going to randomly drop from enemies, but the main source of your shards is not from enemies. They're going to be from jars and from secret chests. I'm talking 95 to 99% of them. Okay, so secret chests. There are going to be doorways tucked around the platforming sections that have a score requirement to unlock. Spotting these chests is not hard if you toss a chest detecting ghost mod into your ghost, which I highly recommend. But like I said, you need to meet a minimum score threshold in order to open the door that contains the chest. And the game does not tell you what this minimum score is, although I'm sure it will be deduced rather quickly by the community. The problem is that unless you start strong with shard collecting from the very beginning, you're pretty much never able to catch up to the scores that you are going to need farther in the activity down the road. So if you're not able to open these doors basically from the get-go, from the start, you should really just restart your run. I don't advocate leaving random groups because things didn't go your way. Maybe wait until the end of a stage. But if you're in a dedicated group, you should probably restart. This is because you still actually need to complete the full run to get maximum rewards. And the hard part of the Coil isn't collecting shards. It's actually beating all of the combat sections. A silver tier run is still going to take you just as much time as a platinum run. So the best thing you can do in this place is make sure you are collecting shards. I cannot emphasize this enough. If you are not hunting down shards in the platforming sections, in the pots and the jars, you are throwing. You're literally throwing. You need to start this process from the get-go, and you need to be getting these hidden chests along the way the entire time. It's not even technically the chests. There's hidden jars and pots behind the doors, and the chest is just a bonus. I'm making it sound much more painful than it actually is. This is not going to take you that much extra time. Each platforming section is probably going to have in between 8 to 12,000 shards, not including the ones hidden behind the door, but that is just an approximation. Other areas might have more. And it's not going to take you that much extra time, maybe a minute. The chest is in every platforming section, every single one. And not only will there be about 4,000 to 5,000 worth of shards, the chest is also going to give you loot, which means as long as you're doing full runs and grabbing these every time, that's an additional 8 items of loot that you're going to be able to get, which at the beginning of the season is a pretty big deal. Later on, not so much. And you're essentially forced to get this loot if you want the biggest loot drop possible at the end of the run, because you need to get shards. And they also have a chance to drop seasonal keys. If you ever see a closed door and it says requires higher score, the odds of catching up are very low. The only thing that might save you is killing a glass collector, which will drop 20 to 25,000 worth of shards. And if you see a glass collector spawn in, which I think should only be spawning in the platforming sections, but I could be wrong, you should absolutely kill it and spend whatever resources you have in order to kill it. A platinum score is estimated to be about 140,000 points, which is a tough score to get currently without the help of a glass collector. It might even be impossible, I'm not even sure. However, I don't know if a glass collector spawns in on every single run. I would assume that it does, because if it's impossible to get platinum without a glass collector, then that's pretty lame, because then it's just RNG if you get it or not. But even if every run does have a collector, then platinum runs may live or die by you getting the collector. And if you don't get the collector kill, your chances of platinum are severely hindered, which could lead to potentially people leaving runs and abandoning runs and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure more information is going to reveal itself in the coming weeks about this process, but one thing that I'm very confident in is telling you to get shards. Okay, so what about the rest of this place? Let's say, I don't know, combat. Things are going to start pretty easy, but as you start to hit stage 3, stage 4, we're talking legend and master difficulty. Haven't seen any champions, so don't worry about that just yet, but 15 and 20 levels above you, pretty big deal. As far as I've seen, the order in which you fight the bosses is the same every time, but this is obviously subject to a daily or weekly rotation. The non-boss encounters are pretty self-explanatory. It's going to be like, dunk the ball in the thing. It's going to be kill stuff. It's going to be kill a specific enemy by killing other enemies or picking up a buff. Stuff like that. You get it. The first boss encounter is literally the Dul Inkaru fight from Shattered Throne. 3 buffs are going to drop from a very specific enemy. You're going to pick them up. You stack the bonus. You deal damage to the boss. You cleanse at the middle statue thing where the abomination is right before the buff expires so you don't die. Do yourself a favor and kill the enemies on the upper level before engaging with the boss, otherwise they're just going to rain hellfire on you. The second boss is Ungoloth, which is just a giant taken ogre that, as far as I know, doesn't really do anything special. You got to kill 3 pretty tanky wizards in order to remove the boss shield first, and they hit pretty hard. Pervading Darkness will also be present here, where you need to stand in a light pool to cleanse yourself, much like the platforming section, which I assume you figured out simply by running the activity. Keep in mind that it is not an instant cleanse. You gotta sit there for a second or two. The third boss is a Vex Chicken. Remove the shield with the arc cannons that are dropped from Minotaurs. The shields are going to stay down for around a minute, but at 66 and 33% of boss health, your entire team will be detained. Spread out, shoot your bubble, like 1 shotgun shot will work, a little bit of SMG spam's going to work, and you're good. A lot of harpies here, A lot of exploding supplicants here to keep you moving. The final boss is in the same room and is the same concept as boss 2, except let me tell you that this boss will do everything in its power to get people out of melee range. If you drop a well on the boss is going to run somewhere else or it's going to teleport away. Strand melee titans, the boss is going to run or teleport away or it's going to stomp you away. This boss is also 20 levels higher than you at this point. So just keep that in mind. This boss is tanky as hell. After stage 1 and stage 2, you're going to come back to Riven, you're going to claim some loot, maybe you're going to buy a buff. The first 2 loot chests aren't anything too crazy after stage 1, stage 2. Stage 3 and stage 4 is where it gets a little more juicy. Stage 3 lets you pick either a weapon or armor piece and has a chance to drop Ascendant Alloy. Stage 4's loot depends on your score and your rating. Silver is going to get you some bonus loot, gold rating going to get you even more loot, and platinum opens a portal to another room containing, you guessed it, even more loot. 4 chests plus the armor or weapons chest that you open, and you also have a chance at another alloy here as well. I got 4 alloy in 3 runs, just keeping in mind that each run was an average of about 45 to 50 minutes. Also keep in mind that 2 of those runs got 2 alloy each, and my 3rd run got 0. So there's a chance that you do get nothing, although Bungie did post that there's an issue with loot drops in the Coil right now, so perhaps they are trying to make things more consistent. Again, it's going to take you 40 to 50 minutes minimum to get to this point, regardless of your score. Pick up the shards. I can't emphasize this enough. Pick up the shards. You might have also noticed the revive tokens. You're going to start with 21 tokens, and you'll even randomly find more if you break open the pots and the jars. It is possible to end this activity with more tokens than what you started with. You can even buy them from Riven for 100 per. It's a lot of revives. But if you completely run out of revives and your team wipes, you're kicked to orbit. It's over. This is what gives the activity some amount of stakes and some amount of tension. Otherwise, the season is structured pretty much like every other season. You get keys to use in seasonal content. Keys are automatically used when opening chests for bonus loot. In the seasonal content, you get keys from ritual activities or even the hidden chests in the Coil, like I mentioned, and you got yourself a weekly quest chain like usual. So first impressions. I'm enjoying the story setting. Mara versus Riven. I like me some Dreaming City themed stuff and events. I like me some Dreaming City backstory and information. I'm into it. I don't know if lore nerds have an issue with the fact that Riven's spirit is able to talk with us because of what the Techians were able to do with like summoning her spirit or whatever. I think it's neat. So the premise for the season is that we asked Riven to grant our wish in order to pursue the witness, and Riven says, "Bro, I'm literally dead. I have no obligation to grant your wishes. But if you find my hidden stash of eggs that you didn't kill while you were getting Wish Ender 5 years ago, I'll grant your wish. So call me the effing Easter Bunny because we're going egg hunting, presumably once a week for the next about 2 months or so." Mara's not too happy about this, since the Ahamkara and the Awoken have been at odds for a while, but she doesn't really have much of a choice right now and just needs to play along. The day 1 experience for me came to a screeching halt when I was presented with a quest step after the introduction that forced us back to Blind Well. You can now queue into Blind Well, you no longer need to run there, but besides Bungie bumping up the power level a smidge, there are no changes to Blind Well. You can't instantly Giga Nuke the tier 4 boss as well as you could pre-Season of the Wish, but as people get acclimated, I'm sure this boss will die very quickly. Yes, you still need to use the Charges of Light here. I was not stoked to see Blind Well again. I really don't like Blind Well because there are not enough enemies while getting to the boss encounter. You can only go as quickly as enemies spawn in, and it's just a lot of standing around under a bubble, desperately trying to kill things or killing things that die instantaneously. It has not aged too well. I hate myself. And if we do have to engage with Blindwell every week, I am just not going to be thrilled about that at all. After you bounce back mentally from multiple Blindwell runs, things got a bit better, culminating in the Coil seasonal activity with a little quest attached to it, which I think is great. You can go the distance if you want. It gets really tough at the end. The rewards are plentiful. You're getting alloy, which is something people have constantly given feedback on. This is something I've been hoping to see in the game for a little while now. Not quite an endless horde mode or anything. I would have loved to continue past 20 power levels as an optional thing after stage 4, just for the thrill of it. But overall, I think the Coil is pretty darn good. I will say that it is likely to be the least casual-friendly seasonal content that we've ever gotten, due to the fact that you kind of need to try. Like, you can't just get really babysat through this. I mean, I guess you kind of can, but, you know, sure, you get 20 plus revives to start. But not everyone is going to make it the distance with a random group, and I'm expecting a lot of, let's call it back and forth on this activity. I'm wondering what the feedback on the Coil after a couple days, weeks, months is going to be. But personally, call me elitist Datto, I dig it. I'm liking it a lot. Am I going to play it that much after I have everything from the season? Probably not, although getting alloy is pretty nice, and if I'm going to try to farm alloy, I don't mind doing it here. But I enjoy running it right now because it's actually kind of difficult as far as seasonal content goes, and as someone who typically falls asleep during seasonal content, I appreciate it quite a lot. So first impressions started okay, and then we went into Blindwell, and I was like, oh my effing god. And then it picked up after we did the Coil a few times. Now, I don't ever feel comfortable saying how I think a season is going to go on day one. It's impossible. Things always start slow. I don't know why people anticipate that Bungie is going to drop half the season on day one. It's a slow burn. It's been a slow burn. If that annoys you, wait until all the story content is out, then come play it. I'm sure it'll be a nice, smooth experience. I don't know what to tell people anymore on that front. Apparently, we got an exotic mission coming in a few weeks. That should be pretty neat. But anyone expecting this season to sustain people for 7 months should really reconsider their position when a typical season is barely able to keep people's attention for 3. This is not going to hold your attention the entire time. That's okay. I keep my expectations in check nowadays. Everything is cautious optimism with me now. So far, nothing about this season really screams to me that Bungie is gonna shake things up overall. You know, I'm still feeling a very strong, like, it's seasonal content vibe kind of deal. But I'm willing to be surprised in the future, so we'll see. I think Mara and Dreaming City enjoyers will have a good time. Anything related to Last Wish, you're going to have a good time. Dreaming City weapons got reprised again. We got a small batch of Season 8 weapons that got reprised. But surprisingly, Garden of Salvation did not get a loot refresh like many were expecting. Now, I'm not going to get too mad about something that Bungie never said was coming, but maybe, hopefully, this is something that we'll see down the road later in the season, because it's going to be a long 187 days. What I am going to get mad about is this. I know this is going to get brought up if I don't talk about it. So here we go. Bungie has released a new item in the Steam store called the Destiny Starter Pack. It gives you Traveler's Chosen. It gives you Ruinous Effigy. It gives you Sleeper Sim. In addition to an exotic ship, an exotic ghost, in addition to 125,000 Glimmer, 50 enhancement cores, 5 enhancement prisms, and 1 Ascendant Shard. Which would be great for new players if it didn't cost $15 goddamn dollars. I don't even care that Bungie is literally selling old-ass exotics to new players. These are not exotics that have a giant impact on the metagame right now, and even if something like Sleeper Sim does have its time in the sun every now and then, the thing is years old already, and at this point, give the new players the damn weapon. I don't care. What I care about is that there is constant feedback about the barrier to entry for Destiny, that expansions outside of sale times are far too expensive to justify buying, and that the game needs new blood, it needs new players to help sustain it, and we are out here still trying to nickel and dime these poor blueberries before they've even started playing the goddamn game. A starter pack like this would be amazing for brand new players if it was free. Hell, pair it with an expansion. Hey, you bought Witch Queen? You bought Lightfall? Here's a little starter pack for you to catch up to the buds. Have fun. You have all this feedback. All of it. Who in the thought this would bring any good publicity to the game? This does not build goodwill. This does not build faith. This reads horribly. How much more tone deaf can you possibly get? It is insane. It is truly baffling how things like this end up finding the light of goddamn day. Unbelievable. That's your first impression. That's how the season works. And that's this stupid starter pack for 15 stupid goddamn dollars. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.